Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I've got Benjamin, my husband, with me today. Welcome. Welcome
What's
to the
up?
channel. If you hear anything in the background, Finnegan decided now was the time that he was going to wake up, so he's currently rolling around on the floor.
Literally
And Cora
upside down right
is
now.
right next to us, so they want to be involved. But
You're being a good dog. Good role model.
Finn, quiet. Anyway, a couple of days ago, I put in the little YouTube community, you can ask people questions, and I asked you guys what you wanted to see a little bit more of. And then I've had a couple of comments asking for more finance videos. It's something that we really want to share. We're just not in a spot right now where sharing our budget makes any sense because it's just going to confuse you because it confuses us. So hopefully sometime this year we'll be able I'll be able to share more. But what we wanted to talk about today is some mistakes that we made in our 20s financially and how we think that we could have changed that. There's a lot of videos out there like this, and I do think that some of our things are probably similar to what other people have said, and then there's some other ones that are, I think, maybe a little bit different than what you might believe. We'll jump right into those. We're actually going to film a video on Benjamin's channel all about personal mistakes that we made in our 20s that we wish we wouldn't have, but we did. I will be frank on both of these videos. I don't really live in regret. So while some of these things, if I were to do them again, I would do them differently, I also don't sit here and regret them and worry about them and things like that. So the first one that I want to talk about that I think Ben and I both have opinions on, and I'll just put a big umbrella term for it, but there's a few things underneath it. So college. We've actually had this conversation with Ben's younger sister who ended up not going to college or not continuing college, and just our views about it. I'll say for me, and then you can talk about whatever you'd like to, but for me specifically, there's a few things about college that I kind of wish I would have done differently, or I wish I would have had more information. The first thing is student loans. I had no idea how they worked. I thought that it was free money. I didn't think about the fact that I would have to pay for it later. Finn just lost a tooth. Finn is losing more teeth than...
It's been literally at least one a day for
Yeah.
the past almost week now.
I thought that I would be making bazillions of dollars out of college and would be able to pay my student loans, which was very untrue. And I just wasn't prepared for what student loans were. My parents only co-signed for me my first year of college, so my interest rates were outrageous the next 3 years, and I had no idea what that even meant. It just was one of those things that I wish that there was more information out in the world about. I think there is now. I think YouTube and people our age are talking about it more, that it is becoming more information you can find. But when I was I had no idea. I don't feel like my parents gave me any help in understanding what that would actually look for because they hadn't been to college, so they had no idea what that looked like either. Yeah, it was just one of those things that I had no idea what I was doing. I took out a little bit more money than I needed sometimes because I needed to pay for books or I needed to do other things. After college, I think there's a 6-month grace period. It took me 9 months to find a job because we both graduated right in the recession, and just a little bit after it, but it was still very much a thing.
Yeah.
And I was making 30 grand a year, having to live on that and then somehow pay $600 or $700 of loans back a month. So definitely something that I wish I would have known a little bit more about. Also, when it comes to college, for me, I wish that I would have put a little bit more money away when I was working. So I worked all through college and I just used that as spending money. And I kind of wish that I either would have saved that or put that toward some of my loans, but I didn't, so it is what it is. But I do wish that I would have had the foresight to do that. But again, I had no idea that I was gonna have, I had no idea how loans worked and how not paying them was actually making it worse. And then the last thing about college for me is I went to an outrageously priced college. And as much as I loved my experience, I loved the friends I made, I ended up working at the college. that I went to. I loved it, and I would never change it because I feel like I got, like we were talking about in the beginning, I had so much great experience that came from it.
Yeah.
But what I learned wasn't useful to me, honestly. I went to a private liberal arts school. I learned a lot of like worldly things. It helped me come out of my shell of like being sheltered my entire life, that kind of thing. But I didn't learn anything about social media. I didn't learn anything about how to write for a business. I didn't learn anything about marketing. All of those things I learned in my internships or in jobs after college or on my own. And I did not learn those in college. So part of me wishes, I don't think at the time going to college was like a thing you had to do. I feel like it's kind of pulling out of that a little bit now. But I wish that I would have went to a school that was a little bit more specific in what I wanted to do. But then again, at 18, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I'm 34 and I still don't fully know. Almost 34 and I still don't know what I want to do. But that's kind of my college wrapped up in one. It ended up being multiple things. But do you have anything about college that's different from what I said?
Do I have anything about college? I have to reel in my rant here.
We could probably do a whole video about
like,
college if you guys are interested.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of that is similar. Like our experiences were different, though, in that my school wasn't crazy expensive. I didn't work enough in school, and so I couldn't have put any of that money away towards anything. So that's something I potentially would have done differently. Again, I don't know, right? Like you try to tell me in that point in my life that you had to work more, I'd be like, no, like I'm not working more. Those are two things that kind of stuck out just as it relates to your story. Again, the degree that I graduated with was a degree that it was a little bit more specific. It's an engineering degree, computer science. So it's like in the technology field, which is kind of like a field that's just continuing to be more and more relevant. So for me, the job I got out of college, which did still take like 6 months, and with my degree and like the college that I graduated from, should have been, in years past, people were, they were like, companies are like trying to get people from the computer science department at U of I. So that's crazy enough that it took me that long, but I got paid $52 out of the gate.
In college.
And I was, and I was living at home for a while. So for me, that part was fine. The difference for me, which we won't go into in this video, but the difference for me is that I left that field after 2 years and kind of restarted, and for the past 8 now have done things that are different than what my college degree is. And so while I may have had a lot more success with my loans, if I continued down that path, I didn't. So there's that.
The next thing that I wrote down for me was taking out a credit card before I understood how it worked, and or taking out a credit card in general. I was worried about credit, and everybody tells you that you need to like build your credit because that's important for who the heck knows why. And so I thought taking out a credit card was the way to do that. However, I was in a very tumultuous financial part of my life. I had no idea how credit cards worked. I had watched people use credit cards incorrectly growing up. So for me, I actually started out with credit cards very softly, and I was really good with it, and I paid it off all the time. And then some shit hit the fan, and I utilized that credit card. And while I'm grateful that I had it during that time, I do think that now as a 33-year-old, I am, and we both are, paying off tons of credit card debt and it's been helpful and we've needed it, but they are a trap, and they're really, really difficult if you don't know what you're using them for. I know that there's tons of videos out there of people that utilize credit cards in like perfectly wonderful ways, but if you do not have the money to pay stuff that you put on a credit card, I do not think that you should get a credit card until you can, because I was doing much better when I was living down to the penny again, it helped with emergencies, but I wish that instead of using a credit card for emergencies, I would have had some knowledge or understanding or teaching about saving or creating an emergency fund. I didn't learn any of that stuff until I was almost 30, and instead I used credit cards as emergencies. And yeah, so just credit cards in general, I think can be very dangerous. I think they can also be very great for people that are in a good place. But with the amount of debt that we're paying off right now from credit cards that have 25% interest on thousands of dollars, we are in a really scary spot because of credit cards. So that's my credit card ramble.
With the credit card thing, my experience is actually pretty different to a point in that for me, and it's kind of how your story started out too, I didn't have any problems with it. I guess I just didn't get to an emergency point as soon as you did. It took longer for me to get to that point. I was
making much less money.
Right, that's what I was going to say. Is
and
like
not living at home,
yeah, I was able to, because of what I was making, because of not having a ton of expenses, I was able to save some money right away, and to have some money. So I did have a credit card. I don't even know when I got it. Yeah, probably, I don't know, around the time I graduated college. Used it very responsibly, and and then obviously with things that happened throughout the course of, over the past handful of years, used it for emergencies. I will say that the danger of credit cards is that they, and again, totally a privilege that we've had good credit and the stuff that we do to be able to put stuff on credit cards when there is an emergency. But it is a slippery slope, because then you're like, oh, well, this thing is there and I can do that. So why can't I do this other thing that I really want to, or I can't afford based on my budget, but I can based on my credit card. Right. So that's where my mistakes have come in, is using that incorrectly for things that I think will pay off. I always forget the opposite of risk averse. I am very willing to take risks when it comes to money. And so for me, I don't mind investing in something if I think it's going to give me a larger return, but have not done that all the time with a credit card.
Right. Or we've been wrong about risks, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to say that's kind of leading into one of the other things.
Right. So, and you can jump in at any time if you want to, but I'll go to my third one, which is, for me, a big issue I had that I could have done differently in my 20s was moving downtown in the city that I lived in. So I lived in Milwaukee. I was living with an ex-boyfriend. We broke up. We lived way out in the middle of nowhere, and I worked downtown Milwaukee, and now I was single. I wanted to be closer to work, and so I moved downtown. I lived in this nasty apartment. It was terrible, but it still was downtown and in all the things, so it was more expensive. And I kind of just wish that I would have found something not as far out as my other place, but far enough out that it would have been a little bit less money, instead of so much worrying about how long it would take me to drive to work. I think that was a huge thing for me, and it kind of ties into my fourth point, which at that point in my life also was centered around drinking and eating too much. So eating out too much. So because I lived on the east side, downtown Milwaukee, if you know anything about Milwaukee, it's like this really cool place. There's tons of bars, tons of restaurants, and I was going to happy hours with friends. I was going on dates. I was going out drinking 2, sometimes 3 nights a week. And then I just went crazy, and I ended up putting those things on credit cards, or I was spending my regular money on that, and then I'd have to put groceries on credit cards or things like that. And it got out of hand, and then I didn't know how to pull it back. And I kept kind of using the excuse of I'm single and I need to make friends, and I was making shit money. I was barely, I think I was making $36,000 and trying to live in an apartment downtown, trying to pay my $700-800 a month bills of student loans. Plus now I had credit card debt. Plus I had, however many hundreds of dollars my apartment was. and then I was going out. There wasn't enough money coming in to pay for the stuff. And now I wish that I wouldn't have done that. Again, that time of my life I'll never get back. I had a great time. I met some great people, and I don't regret that. But at the same time, that's definitely where my first round of debt happened. I was able to pay that off when I moved to Green Bay, and I wasn't in as much debt when I met Ben. And then we kind of went through our own cycle of debt together.
I think for me, the thing closest to this is just like in general, living outside of my means. Like after I had left that job and I became a personal trainer, and then I started making good money in my own business doing that. So I guess the mistake in this is like living outside of my means because I didn't really fully know what my means were.
Right.
I was not super clear on that. I was like, oh, I'm making good money.
Right.
And that's like literally what I went based off of. And I was like, so I can afford to do this. I can afford to do that. Now, I will say I've always been relatively conservative in that route. I've never been over the top. I've never been a big drinker or a big partier, or like I like a good meal out every once in a while. I like to live in a place that makes me feel comfortable. And the biggest expense for me with that came when I decided to live on my own in Chicago, which was expensive. I always had a pretty good discipline around those things, but I did not actually know how much money I had to spend. I will insert the main thing that I have for this video that's not related to Jesse's other topics or directly related to, which is not knowing how to budget.
Right.
That's it. Like, that's the biggest thing for me, is because I did have a decent amount of money, a decent income, and my student loans weren't as crazy. So it's like, I could have fit everything into my lifestyle, but I didn't know what that was. So
right.
Not learning how to budget before I was 30 years old was definitely my biggest mistake.
Yeah, and I don't want to like throw you under the bus at all, but when we were kind of going through some major financial hardship when Ben got sick, he was also like kind of afraid of looking at the budgets. I do budget, and I have budgeted for a really long time. I started budgeting for myself when we were together, and then my expenses started increasing because Ben wasn't able to work. And then when we got married, or right before we got married, we combined finances. So then I've taken care of our budget since then. And honestly, up until about a year ago, he like would not look at the budget, and he had a really hard time with it because it was really stressful for him. So I think that there were even mistakes that we made in our early 30s that were more because you didn't know what the budget looked like, or you didn't know that the money was actually coming from my credit card or things like that. So it was one of those things where it was like an out of sight, out of mind, I don't have to worry about it thing, which created a lot of distress in our relationship as well, because I
like
felt,
it does in plenty of relationships.
Right, exactly. So it's something that is not something that is an issue so much anymore. I feel like you're more, I still run the budget, but he understands what's going on, basically. So that was something, I think that's a good thing to point out. And it was kind of what I was thinking about as well before. But the last one I want to say for me, which you can kind of add in whatever you want to, I'm going to just say coaching as an umbrella experience. I would say that I'm not super risk adverse either. Like I've moved multiple times in my life. I've left jobs that I wasn't happy at. I've done all these things that some people might consider risky, but I invested in coaching when I knew deep in my gut that it's not what I wanted to do. But we were in such a financial hard place, and I was in a job that was literally killing my soul, that I was just grasping, and everybody else was coaching, and I was like, I want to be a coach. I'm going to be a coach. Ben's going to be a coach. We're all going to be coaches. So we invested thousands of dollars for him to be in a group coaching program. We've invested a couple $1,000s in me doing business coaching with a couple of people. I will say I did have a life coach in my 20s who sometimes I did pay on my credit card, but I don't regret her because she helped me through a lot. But my business coaching, I definitely regret Again, I don't regret them, but I wish that I would have actually sat with my gut and thought about, do I want to do this versus do I want to do this because everybody else is doing this? Do I want to do this because I feel like this is a quick way out of the terrible situation that I'm in? That was for me, we were in a really hard place relationally, financially. I hated my job and I just wanted, everybody else was becoming these like $20,000 a month coaches. And I was like, great, I can do that. And then I invested in these coaches and then I wondered why I never moved forward with anything. And it was because I didn't want to do that. And I think that the coaching space really, some of the coaching space really like preyed on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
I thought you said praise.
Well,
but or
yeah.
Praise.
Yeah.
They prey on that. They know how to sales you. They know how to say things to you that will put you into this, like, you have to make a decision like this, otherwise you're not going to get this great grand deal. I fell into that hard. I think we fell into that with you hard too. Yeah. And I wish that we wouldn't have done that. That's a good $7,000-8,000 of our debt, if not more than that, that we put just, if I'm just thinking about like coaches that we spent money on, that quite honestly, neither of us got anything out of. So that's a huge one that I really wish. That one I kind of regret. That one, there's a little bit more regret with that one because I don't feel like we got much from it.
Yeah. So this is also as a coach for anybody that doesn't
Life
know.
coach though.
But
still.
Yeah, I've been in the coaching space for the past handful of years. There is a lot of this. And so the main thing I had to add to this was just that part of this was on us as the consumer and part of this was on the coaches as well.
Right.
Like, I think it's just important to, because like you did a good job of acknowledging, like, I wasn't in the right place to be investing in this. I wish I had, really honestly sat with that. So that's good. You should be like taking ownership for that. But I will say that some of the coaches that we had were not completely not at fault at like it not being a worthwhile investment either. Right. Now, this is the gamble that you're taking in the coaching space because it's unregulated. So at the end of the day, it does kind of all fall back on the consumer. Just want to point that out. And so for anybody that is, going into the coaching space or looking to the coaching space to, especially if you're trying to get yourself out of a situation that you don't love and that kind of sucks, just really be aware of, like, do your research, know about the coach, know about their success stories and not just the ones that they're
talking about. Previous clients.
Yes.
That is a big one for me. I wish that I would have. Sorry to interrupt you, but like, I would say that the business coach that I had most recently has successful clients now. But if I would have talked to the clients that she had prior, we were definitely like a trial group for her, and it was $2,500 of trial.
I was gonna say, and that's one thing if you know that, and if you are a trial group, because I've done that with people. I ran a group coaching program. But you wouldn't have charged $2,500. I had already built out a framework, like I'd already worked with people one-on-one, and had already had results and things like that. Right. So
do your research.
Make sure like Jesse said, the best thing you can possibly do is find other clients of theirs that you can talk to. If they're new, that's totally cool too. Just make sure they're not charging you a premium. Right. Yeah, and then just to like really, really harp on one of the main things you were saying is like, it's easy to make bad decisions when you are in a difficult place. And I don't even necessarily think that those were wrong because you do kind of have to grasp for straws at points when you're in a bad place to try to make something change. Don't kill yourself over that if you did that or have done that or are doing it currently or whatever, but just know that it's important to try to be honest with yourself in those situations, because I can definitely say I knew that I was grasping and spending $5,000 for a group program that ended up not being great. Right. I just want to add one thing that I think a lot of other people do wrong in their 20s, which is being too conservative, doing the investing in your 401k, which is fine. Like, do that. That's great. But only doing those things, only investing in these longer term things. Like, take chances on yourself, take chances with your money, do things
if you have the money to do that.
Yes. But if you have that ability, do that in your 20s, because each decade of your life that goes by, that becomes significantly harder to do. And Gary Vaynerchuk is somebody who talks about this a lot, and I love him for this. I don't agree with him on everything, but I love him for this particular thing, is that you have way more time in your life than you think you do in your 20s. You feel like you're going to be 30 and you're grown up and your life is over, which is not true. So make mistakes in your 20s. Like we kind of prefaced at the beginning, we don't really regret any of this stuff. Yes, there are mistakes. Yes, there are things we could have done differently. But at the end of the day, we learned a lot from all of this. These are mistakes that we will not make going forwards. So yeah, I just want to say that too. Like, don't be afraid to make mistakes either, as long as they aren't completely life altering.
So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you let us know down below if there's anything you would like us to elaborate on, any of our experiences, that the mistakes we made in our 20s and early 30s. But thank you so much for watching. Again, remember, Ben is going to put up a video, hopefully if we have time to film it, on some other mistakes we made in our 20s, maybe more personal versus finance. So head on over, I'll have the link down below. But we will see you in the next video.
Thanks for hanging out.
Bye.